Hi, everyone, and welcome for joining today's AMA here in the HubSpot operations community. For those who don't know me, I am Jan, and I'm the RevOps marketer and community manager here at HubSpot. With us today, we have the amazing Jesse Tremblay and Angus Gibbs. Jesse is the group product manager of automation here at HubSpot, and I think you basically oversee all the automation developments, and you've also spearheaded the latest and greatest updates to HubSpot workflows called Programmable Automation and Data Quality Automation. And joining Jesse, we have Angus Gibbs here as well. Angus is a tech lead here at HubSpot, and he was basically, I think, Jesse's right-hand man during the course of the development of these two new features. Guys, I just want to say welcome to all of you here, and thanks for taking an hour out of your day to talk to us here. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited about this. So like you're telling me thank you for taking the hour out of my day. I could do this all the time, so I love it.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me.
Yeah, I love to hear it. Before we get to all of the questions that all these folks have for you, I just want to quickly talk to all of you here on this call. I've invited Angus and Jesse to talk about Operations Hub and the two features I just mentioned. But they're, of course, are experts on automation in general and on development and on product. So feel free to ask any questions here. It's an Ask Me Anything, so there are really no wrong questions. Please just put your questions in the chat. And yeah, when we get to you, we might ask you to unmute your mic. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, of course, you're not obliged to do so. Now, before we get off to the questions, there's one question I would like to ask first, just to get like everyone up to temperature here. And that's basically like, hey, Jesse and Angus, what are the two new automation features? Can you just briefly describe them, what they are?
Yeah, absolutely. And like to take a little bit of a step back and to think about like what we're actually solving and who we're solving for here. So when we've done a lot of like talking to operations managers, whether it's in marketing ops roles, sales ops roles, or revenue ops roles and things like that. And one of the things, like there were two main problems that we noticed with not only HubSpot, but just like the tools that they're using to try to get their jobs done and things like that. And two main themes that we heard were that that operations folks often have like this problem being able to help their teams operate more efficiently across a lot of like custom processes in their business. So like no two businesses are completely alike, and a lot of solutions on the market today have like a lot of like rigid kind of solutions that prescribe very specific processes and things like that. And we've done that a lot in HubSpot to make HubSpot really easy to use. But that ease of use and those kind of more contained kind of use cases also prevents customers from being able to actually more flexibly solve problems for their business. So with our programmable automation, what we wanted to do is take a little bit of a step back and provide a more flexible solution so that customers could basically customize any process and solve any process that they wanted to. So that's a big kind of direction that we're trying to go with this, is to help our customers have the flexible tools they need to solve any process that they have. Then on the other side of that, another main problem that we knew is that customers had a problem with keeping their data up to date and clean, depending on like the circumstances. Like maybe you're uploading lists where names and dates and things like that aren't formatted correctly, or people are filling out forms on your website and they're just kind of haphazardly going in there and adding in data and things like that. And what we wanted to do is actually help teams have the right tools to be able to keep their data in the state that they need it to, so they could personalize content in a way that was better for the customer experience and things like that, which is where we started with our format data action, which we're really excited about, because that's an area where we want to lean into a little bit more, is giving customers more tools to be able to flexibly keep their CRM data up to date and clean and relevant and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we can all get behind. Like we've all gotten that email where like your name was in all caps and stuff like that. The new data quality automation feature basically solve that and make sure that the data, like your names aren't capitalized and stuff like that. And then we of course also have programmable automation, the ability to yeah, plug in any custom code actions and really customize all of the business processes in your CRM, basically. So yeah, I think, I'm not sure, the people on this call, maybe you can just post in the chat, like, how familiar are you with these two new features? Have you already used them, or are you brand new to them? Because I think my next question would be to Angus or Jesse to kind of showcase these two new features. So please post in the chat what you want to see here, or if there's anything like we need to dig deeper on. I see there's someone brand new to these features. Okay, someone else. Yeah, Jesse or Angus, take it away.
All right, awesome. I'll jump in and do a little bit of a demo here. Awesome. Can everybody see my screen, or does anybody have a problem seeing my screen? All right, awesome.
You're good.
So what I'm going to show off is our new custom code action. And I'm going to show a couple different use cases that you can think about using this custom code action for. So imagine you have a sales team where you want to like weight the lead rotation based on whether it's like the seniority of people on the team or individuals, or maybe there's some other criteria where you don't necessarily want that even distribution of splitting of customers. So one of new leads to specific reps. So one thing that you could actually do is like build a workflow that will allow you to basically look at all of the owners, or basically like the owner IDs of all the sales reps in your company, and use those to define like which owners should get what percentage of new leads that come in. And effectively what this will allow you to do is to kind of like predefine what specific owners would be able to maybe you want like your more senior sales reps to get 50 or 60% of new leads, and your more junior folks to get 10% of new leads as they're ramping up to make sure that they're not being overwhelmed and things like that. So you could basically like define what level the owners get. Then you'd be able to like jump in here and do stuff like that. And so basically what this new feature is a way to use JavaScript to define how you'd want a specific process to run. So in the past, like we have our assignment tool, which basically, if we go to our current assignment tool, allows you to do some kind of like basic assignment where you pick like the contact owner, and maybe you want to rotate by the specific teams and things like that. But it does like kind of a basic round robin and just kind of evenly distributes folks. But if you want to customize that process, this custom code action will allow you to, again, use JavaScript to be able to do that, which is really exciting and powerful, because it basically it removes all of the restrictions of like what the specific processes would be here. So I'm not going to get into like the specifics of the code, because I think some of these things are a little bit hard to kind of walk through, but I'll talk through some of like the top level elements here. So basically you'd be able to like define what the percentages would look like. You'd be able to define like what services you want to like actually call out to. Then you would define like what your function would actually look like what is it, how is it actually going to like process the data and the function in it. And one of the cool features that we have in this is that you can actually log errors, and they'll show up in the history logging in workflows. So you can kind of customize the log events and things like that. And then one of the more powerful things that we've been adding throughout all of workflows, we call like data outputs and data inputs. Internally, we call this data passing, which is basically, in the past, you've only been able to use the data that's been available on the enrolled object. But now what we're trying to do is expand that to the data that's created from a particular object itself. So with this particular object, you'd be able to actually define what the output of that data was. So, and the output here would be like, who is the assigned owner based on the function that ran. And then you can take that output and say, okay, I want to use that numeric value, because all of the owner IDs are stored as numeric values in HubSpot. I want to output that as an owner ID. And then another cool feature that we just released is what we call simple branching, With our other branch, before I dive into that, with our other branching, basically you'd have to like build out a series of if-thens, and you'd have to go one by one and build out all these different if-thens. With this new simple branch, basically what you can do is take the result of an action that happened before and say, okay, I want to branch on, and these are basically the three owner IDs that I put in here before. I want to branch on those, and then as soon as you create those branches, then it'll actually put these all underneath here. In some other actions, it'll actually show a drop down when the values are known and stuff like that, which is why we call it the simple branch. But basically, this will allow you to route to each one of those reps, or you could have like a bunch of reps kind of like on a team here, and route those to like the specific owner that you want to get those things. So that's one way to think about how to use this new custom code action to more programmably automate your processes around like weighted lead rotation. Another example around lead rotation, and this one kind of gets into calling out to a third-party service, is you could actually use something like an API. Like you could call out to an API service that looks up zip codes and maps those zip codes to different regions and do sort of a similar thing. So in this function, you're basically looking at the zip code on the contact record. You're mapping all of those, all of like the current states and zip codes to different regions. And then you can write a function to be able to actually look at, you could look at all of the those zip codes and then map a region that you've defined for like your sales teams to operate in. And then again, you could use that simple branch to create the different branches. Actually here I use the if then branch, and then route to the different contact owners based on the teams that they're in. So then it would automatically know who to rotate this to based on the team that they're on and things like that, which is pretty cool. So basically what it does is it rewrites a new property on the contact record that says like this contact owner or this person is in this region, and then you can use that to define like who it gets rotated to. So those are two examples of like how to run like a lead rotation process. You could even like string these things together to like build on them to have like a weighted plus a regional lead rotation, which is pretty cool. And also shows how you can actually call out to third-party services like the zip code service, and also using your like HubSpot Happy Key, making API calls back into HubSpot. So those are two ways to use the custom code action. Another thing, actually, I'm going to throw it over to Angus to talk about like one use case that he has here.
Cool. Yeah. So I have a similar use case to what Jesse's showing off here. This is just another example of how you can call out to a third party when you're running your custom code. So what I have here is a workflow that enrolls whenever a contact is created and we know the zip code. And the code that it's running is basically, if we open this up in the full page editor, it's going through, it's pulling off the zip code property from the contact, and then it's calling on to this this free weather API. It's getting the current weather condition and then returning that as a output from the action. And then what we have below that is a branch here branching on the different conditions. And I'm just using an in-app notification here, but you could use like a third-party SMS provider. You could use just HubSpot built-in email. And these are just sending different messages depending on what the contact's different, like what current weather conditions are. The messages are probably showing off why I'm a software engineer, not a marketer. But the point kind of remains of like, if it's rainy, they get the rainy message. If it's snowy, they get the snowy message. And to Jesse's point earlier, I actually just before this ran a contact through this, and you can see in the output there is that for this contact it was cloudy, and then you can see the information that we logged. So we logged out the zip code we found and the current temperature and the weather code, which we turned into a description, and then you can see it kind of flowing through and going to the cloudy, which is true, it's cloudy here. the cloudy notification, and then it pops up in here, cloudy day. So cool stuff.
I think that's just like an amazing example, because that's really just using HubSpot to automate things that were before people had to rely on third-party applications, maybe like a Zapier, just to really have tailored and personalized emails or other kinds of notifications sent to people based on, like in this case, just weather information. I think that's such an awesome application.
Yeah, we're really excited about the use cases that are getting opened up by this.
All right, so those are custom code actions. Jesse or Angus, would you mind also like briefly showing what's possible with like the format data actions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can jump in here. So with our new format data action, imagine that you have, like I mentioned, people are filling out their names in forms, or you're uploading data for whatever reason, and it's not quite in the format that you want. And you want to make sure that names are, maybe first names and last names are capitalized in the right way, so that you can personalize content. Well, so we've introduced this format data action, and this actually provides a lot of different types of formats that you can do. So with this format, you could basically say like, enroll a contact. Then what you want to do is like select the property that you want to format, like the last name, or it could even be like company name or anything like that. And then you can pick the specific format that you want to apply to it. And some of these formats are things like changing the casing of letters. So you can uppercase, you can capitalize first letter, you could uppercase all of the letters, you could lowercase all the letters, and things like that. And then there are some other options in here where you can manipulate numbers and other sort of data fields. But for the purposes of this demo, basically going to show off like how you can format a last name and a first name. So then, as I mentioned, that whole like concept of data passing before, we've actually applied that to this action as well, so that you could use this data not only to like update the CRM, but you could potentially use it in other actions. Like maybe you could drop it directly into an email, or you could drop it directly into something else. In this case, I'm actually going to like update the CRM property. So what I do is I enroll the contact, I format the last name, then I want to copy that property into the CRM. And what you'll see now is like if you go to the different properties that you want to copy the value from, you'll get all of the data about the enrolled contact, like I mentioned before, but now you'll start seeing the different actions that pop up here. So this one will show this action, which is the one.format this first format action. And I can say, okay, give me that string value that it output. And I want to copy that to a contact record, and the property that I want to copy it to is the last name. So it can kind of override that last name. And then you could basically string a couple of these together to do the same thing. And you could say like, I want to capitalize the last name and then copy it to the CRM property. Then I want to capitalize the first name and then copy that to the CRM property as well. So there's a lot that you can do with this. And this is like an area that we're going to continue to kind of expand on to provide more kind of point and click formatting for data through automation.
I think like it's such a simple thing, but it's so powerful, because how many of us, like I've talked to a lot of like operations folks who are just constantly like doing data cleanup projects, exporting data from the CRM into like a spreadsheet, then updating all the names and then re-importing, like, and this is just such an easy tool to use instead of like spending so much time on that. There already were a couple of questions here, and let's quickly talk about them. Like Andrew asked, like, is this a product for internal dev teams or BizOps users? And to add to that, like, I think my next question was in any case going to be like, how do people get access to these features? Like what package do they need, or is it automatically included?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to kind of answer who we think these features are for, we're really trying to cater these features to business ops folks to solve those different like process and strategic problems in their business. We've seen through like a lot of our customers who've been adopting this, sometimes it's the operations team actually like executing it, or sometimes they're pulling in development resources from a development team, or maybe they have developers on their team, or they're working with some sort of consultant to like help them actually like write a custom process using JavaScript. In terms of like how this is packaged in HubSpot, so these features are both available as a part of our newly launched Operations Hub, and they're both at our Operations Hub Pro. So if you buy Operations Hub Pro as a part of either as like a standalone hub, or as a part of our CRM suite, you'll get both of these features.
All right, cool. Like, some of you may have joined the AMA a couple of weeks ago with Connor Jeffers, and he was just so excited about these 2 new features. And I think one of the things that he mentioned is that we haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible with like programmable automation. And I think that's the goal, right? To have limitless, endless possibilities that we can do with this. So my question to you, like, have you already seen people use these 2 new features that kind of blew you away, that you were just like, wow?
Yeah, there's been a couple like really interesting use cases. Like one company is doing, they do like, they basically like provide a moving, like a rental and moving service for customers. And they were actually like pulling, when they had like a whole automated system to provide quotes back to customers. And in the past, they've had to like, you know, customers will input certain things, and they figured out how to game the system to like get lower quotes and stuff like that. And it caused kind of an operational nightmare for them to like actually reconcile it. And then they'd have to go back. But they started pulling in things like Zillow data into HubSpot to like look at, like, to confirm that things like square footage and stuff like that actually aligned, and stuff like that. And those are like some pretty fascinating use cases. Or, you know, customers using tools like Kickbox and stuff like that to actually pull in to understand, like, you know, certain things about, you know, whether an email actually exists or something like that. And basically calling out to like different third-party services in ways to pull data into HubSpot to kind of customize those processes. So there's been a lot of like really, really fascinating and interesting use cases that we've seen, but definitely like on the lookout for more kind of interesting use cases.
Absolutely. So to everybody on this call, I've said it before, feel free to drop your questions in the chat for Angus and for Jesse. We're happy to answer them. In the meantime, I think I have 1 or 2 more questions. Like, what is next on your plate? Like, you've just worked on Operations Hub and these 2 new features. Like, what are you doing now? Are you thinking about improving or adding new features to them, or are you thinking about other roadmap items?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say with everything that we do here at HubSpot, like anytime that we launch like a new feature, the first order of business is like making sure that we're, you know, as customers are adopting them, that we're like listening to feedback, keeping those feedback loops tight, which is honestly why I love coming to things like this, to get that kind of, you know, the real use case and feedback from folks, to make sure that like what we're solving for actually, or what we're like delivering actually solves for problems. So a lot of what we're going to be doing is like capturing customer feedback and improving these features to, you know, help them easier to use and adopt and stuff like that. And then going forward, like I'd say like one of the big things that we're really focused on is we spent a couple of years replatforming our whole automation platform. Like in the early days, it was really just all about marketing automation and like contact automation. We've been building it more integrated into our CRM platform, and we did a bit of a replatforming. But now, like the direction that we're going, now that we're in a really good state, is actually opening up the flexibility of our platform for new types of use cases. So in the way that we'll do that is kind of in 2 ways. Like one, to kind of continue to work on like the extensibility and flexibility through our APIs and tools like programmable automation. And then on the other hand is actually look at specific use cases that customers have that we think we should just bake into the platform and make really easy to use. So for example, the whole way that the format data action even came up was we're kind of beta testing the format, our programmable automation, and most customers were actually just formatting data with it in the early days. So we're like, oh, we could make this like way easier, and so that people don't need to write JavaScript to be able to do it. We can make it a little bit more point and click. So I'd say like the two big themes are us trying to open up our platform to make it more flexible and extensible, while at the same time like finding those like really specific use cases that customers have and making them a lot easier to use and adopt.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very exciting prospect. And I think we set probably like the baseline for it with our custom objects and with the custom code actions. I'm also excited to see what's next there. We've got one question by Randy that came in here. Is there a way to anonymize personal identity information, like probably GDPR related with? Is that something that we can do with these new workflow items?
Randy, would you mind just kind of talking a little bit about what sort of information you are hoping to anonymize, like where that lives, and like, would you like to clear it, to kind of like obfuscate it somehow?
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah, it's GDPR compliance.
Okay, so assuming, so I think there are a couple potential answers, and this actually kind of gets to a good overarching question of like, what are the limitations of programmable automation? So kind of the high level answer is, as long as you can trigger your workflow when you need to, and an API exists to do the thing you want to do, you're pretty much set to do what you're trying to do. So like, for example, if this data lives in HubSpot and you want to either like clear a property or delete a contact when like a GDPR request comes through, HubSpot has APIs to like update contacts. You can also just use data passing and the copy property action. So if you just need to like clear out fields from the contact record based on like something happening that you're able to trigger the workflow by, that's definitely doable. You could even take that a step further, and if there's some like third-party system you're using that has an API that has data that needs to get GDPR deleted, you could use the custom code action to like call out to that API and do the GDPR cleanup in the third party as well.
I think one thing to like build on that as well is that we see is like, we've heard some customers talk about this, and also one of the benefits that we think this custom code action actually provides is it provides a way to actually like customize process on like data in HubSpot without having to like send that data somewhere else. So like, Randy, to your question around like keeping all of the data in HubSpot, the nice thing about this is that you could actually like call third-party services without having to like export your HubSpot data outside of HubSpot. And you could like use whatever information that you're using to like process the data inside of HubSpot, so that you're never like, you know, pushing that data, the secure kind of like sensitive customer data that you have out to like some third-party service where you might not have the same level of control over, or security and things like that.
All right, and I think Randy also asked if there's any documentation like, okay, yeah. Thanks so much for your question, Randy. Is there any documentation around that, Jesse or Angus, at this point?
We have, I'm actually going to drop something in the chat here, but I thought I had this ready, but I don't. In our knowledge base, we have some documentation around like how to use this, action. And Angus had also dropped a link to our developer docs that actually has some like code examples in there for some of the use cases that we've either talked about today or some other ones. So feel free to dig into that.
Yeah, specifically, there are some examples in there that show off how to call the HubSpot API to do things that aren't supported in workflows. And I think that could be a good starting point if you're looking to do some sort of GDPR cleanup or just other like data formatting, data massaging from the custom code action. There's some examples that should get you going.
All right. In case there are no other questions coming in, I do have another question for you now, and you kind of touched on this a bit earlier, like the limitations of those programmable automation. Like what is currently not blatantly possible with programmable automation at this point?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I touched a little bit on the kind of like high level like workflow level limitation of you need your workflow to be able to get triggered by something so that your custom code actually runs. And then you're definitely limited, like there needs to be some sort of API to do the thing you want to do if you're trying to talk to a third party, like to a certain, there's kind of not much that we can do if you're trying to work with a vendor that doesn't open up an API for you to interact with the vendor. There's just not a ton we can do there. In terms of like the actual kind of like code limitations, we have these all like documented. I think it's in our developer documentation that I linked. So the actual like specific like kind of runtime limits are all documented there. I think that the most important one that people should be aware of is the 20-second time limit on running the code. That is like plenty of time for if you need to kind of like call out to a couple APIs to like validate an email or like, create a record somewhere and maybe make a few API calls. If you're trying to do some sort of like batch processing over thousands of records at a time, that's probably not going to fit in the 20 seconds.
All right. I just noticed that Randy had asked a question earlier that I didn't get to. He asked if we were able to format names that are in all caps.
Yeah, sorry, that is a great question. So yeah, we basically have a number of different ways that you could format any string. So it's not just names. You could do it to any like string data. You could lowercase all of the letters. You could uppercase all the letters. You could capitalize them. You could title case. So if you have multiple like words in a string, you could capitalize all of them there. I'll grab some documentation and dump that into the chat as well. But effectively, yeah, you could handle all caps or a bunch of those different use cases, and you can string them together. Like let's say you have a ton of data that's in a bunch of different states, and you kind of want to normalize it. So then you could like update and get all of the first names capitalized. You could basically like lowercase everything to start, and then uppercase, and then do like the capitalization so that everything is in the right format and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Alicia also asked, is there a chance that some actions like data formatting might become available in other plans?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one that's come up a bit. The way that we're like really thinking about this is like we're trying to package the features specifically for the customer that we think is going to get the most value out of it. So really like with things like keeping data clean and stuff like that, we've seen and we've heard a lot of feedback from mainly operations people, even though like data quality is certainly like a problem that everyone has. But we see this as a feature that will probably stay in Operations Hub for quite a long time, if not the foreseeable future.
All right. I also had another question here. Are there any risks involved with using custom code actions in terms of like security and privacy, stuff like that?
I kind of touched on that a little bit. So, and Angus kind of dug into this a little bit more. Anytime you're sending data outside of HubSpot, there's always a risk. So like if you're making API calls and you're sending data outside of HubSpot, there's always a risk that you have kind of lost the security and the control that we're trying to, that we offer here at HubSpot. So we can't guarantee that if you send data from HubSpot to, like, I don't know, whether it's a Google Sheet or another CRM that you're using or another tool, that data will be secure because you're transmitting it outside of HubSpot. But the nice thing about the way that this works that I mentioned is because you can actually like pull in other information and use other third-party services all within this function, you never actually have to transport that data outside of HubSpot, so you can keep it all securely within HubSpot. So there are some amount of security benefits and risk benefits to using a tool like programmable automation to keep things less risky and more secure. With that being said, there's always some amount of risk with something that's like really flexible and opens up the doors to all the different use cases.
Yeah. I got one other question here, and that is the ability, like being able to code in HubSpot is very exciting in terms of customizability, but what this person is asking, like, is it's a little daunting to him because no one at his company currently really knows JavaScript. Like, what would be your advice to those kind of folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that some of the things that we've seen from other customers is there's kind of like two paths. One is, or I guess maybe there's three, but like a couple different ways that like our customers have been thinking about this in ways that I think have been pretty interesting. Like, one is like we have a great partner network of folks who are like specifically like here to help with these sort of like implementations, and they can come in and not only like help implement, but help consult on like how to think about using these sort of things, what new strategies you could use for stuff like that. Another is like sometimes if there are development resources within the company is to try to make the business case to bring those developers in. And then the other thing is I've seen some people who are non-technical just kind of go in and hack around and learn how to use it, because one of the nice things about the way that, even though it is JavaScript, it's mainly self-contained. So you only have to learn a couple different JavaScript concepts to be able to like actually write and execute a function for certain things. So we've seen some customers even just learn some of like the JavaScript basics on things like Code Academy or Treehouse and things like that. But I would say like if you don't have resources within your company, our partner network is like really strong, and they're people who have like a high amount of expertise around a lot of this stuff, and there's some really great ones out there that could help you.
Yeah, good question. So I don't see any questions in the chat anymore. Feel free to add them. Oh, just one came in. Christina says, do you have ideas or custom code workflows you have done with ChargeBee? We first need to clean up packaging. But once we get that down, is there a way to do that with the if-then or custom code?
I'm just trying to read through that question again. Christina, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like some of the challenges that you have with the packaging data.
Yep. So like right now, we're like completely changing it because we were on like OffNet, and then we went to ChargeBee, which is like, it's kind of like Stripe in a sense, but we are changing it up in the sense of if there's gonna be like 3 different like bundles per se, but then there's gonna be different like upsells and things like that that people can do, but it's gonna be very like custom per what the deal is. But the struggle that we're, I guess this struggle, but the ideal situation would be like triggers for like DocuSign connecting with ChargeBee, and then like with HubSpot sending out an email for all of that, and like pulling in the data from each of those steps.
Got it. And then pulling in the data from each of those steps and then using that in the email to send out something that's like personalized and has all the information about the deal and stuff like that. Got it.
Correct. Yeah, like if it's also too, if like a credit card's expired, or if they've entered not, like there's so many different situations that it could be, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a couple different ways to think about that are, do you have like a e-commerce store that you're using or anything that's like where all of like the products live and stuff?
So we're like a SaaS company,
Oh, I see.
and so are not really, but it's really based on what the sales like.
Yep.
I mean, so it's not really
That makes
an
sense.
e-commerce store per se. We work with e-commerce stores, yes, but we're not an e-commerce store.
Got it. So is HubSpot the main place where you're storing all of like the deal and product data?
So, okay, that's a very, I'm going to try to shorten this answer. We use Salesforce and HubSpot, but we use HubSpot for a lot of the things because it's easier to connect with than Salesforce. And I mean, I guess the answer is we use both, but they're basically mirrored in a sense of deals and like opportunities, and like everything is pretty much mirrored. And like I obviously prefer like HubSpot in that sense because it makes my life a lot easier with everything I can do with it. Because Salesforce is great and I'm like Salesforce admin, but I'd rather work in HubSpot with anything.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's fair. So I think like one way to think about this is that if you're trying to like pull in ChargeBee data and like attach that to things like deals and products and stuff like that, this custom code action could actually be a really great way to do that. I'm not super familiar with the ChargeBee APIs, so I'm not sure what's available. I would assume it's probably quite a bit. But that's one way to think about it, is that you could use automation to actually like go out and when a particular deal hits a certain state or like wherever you're at, to go and grab all that information from ChargeBee and then write it back to the deal itself, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally. Yeah, that does. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Cool. We also had another question from Andrew. Is there any certification on this or service type we can search for that shows partners that are proficient in this product? And I think there is.
Yes, we actually have a bunch of approved partners. Let me see if I can find the list for that. I don't have anything more than just trying to find that list. So that's it. I'll try to find that as we keep going.
All right, cool. If you have any further questions, everyone here, just feel free to put them in the chat. I personally had a question for Jesse or Angus, and that's whether it would be possible to, like, these custom code actions currently rely on JavaScript. I don't think JavaScript is fairly known, but I don't think everyone uses it or uses it daily. Are we thinking of adding other supporting other languages?
That's a really good question. We've had this question come up a few times in our beta, and since we've launched, some other customers asked this question. I think in the short term, we're pretty invested in JavaScript because it's a fairly universal language that folks are looking at. And also, like I mentioned, we're really trying to focus on, or like where we're at now after we've launched, is around making the product, easy to use, easy to adopt, and expand some of the capability of it. I think in the future, we'll potentially consider new languages that we add, but it's not on the roadmap right now.
All right, cool. Let's wait for some more questions to come in. In the meantime, what other kinds of things are you working on currently for like data quality automation? Like you talked about being able to lowercase data, uppercase. Are there any other things, like maybe with, I'm just thinking maybe phone numbers or any other data fields?
Sorry about that. I was like searching for the list of partners. Would you mind repeating that question?
So I was just wondering, like, what else is on the roadmap for data quality automation? Like you talked about text fields, lowercase, uppercase. What's on the roadmap for like other fields, like number fields or maybe date fields? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. We focused pretty heavily on string values to like really get that into good state, because those were some of like the hardest challenges that customers have. I think going forward, a couple areas that we're going to be focused on. One is around like date formatting to provide like a higher level of or an easier way to format dates into different places and stuff. And then also to add things like math formulas and stuff like that as well. So those are some examples of a couple things that we're going to be going at with that in the future as well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, April is very excited about math formulas.
Me too.
So I also have one more question. Like I imagine that opening up HubSpot for custom code, that there were probably quite some challenges that came with that. Because with normal code actions, you're of course it's very declarative, right? There's just one thing that the action does. With code action, there's so much that can be done. Like what were the challenges when you were developing something like that? Was it different from other types of development, or was it like?
Yeah, I'd say like from a product perspective, like one of the challenges always at HubSpot is like, to Christina's point, we're always trying to like make HubSpot really easy to use and easier to use than other tools on the market. But something like this that opens up and makes things more flexible and provides a level of customization that we haven't offered before, we end up with a weird kind of like dichotomy and balance of like trying to provide a level of flexibility while at the same time not making our platform impossible to use for folks. So it's been a little bit of like weighing some of those trade-offs from a product perspective and like really getting feedback from customers around like what level of customization they need, which is why I think we've kind of developed this philosophy of like, you know, opening up the flexibility and not just being afraid to take some of those risks there, but listening to customers and trying to find those like specific solutions that they're trying to do that are kind of ubiquitous that we could actually make a lot easier to use across the customer base. So that I'd say that was one thing. The other, like, and maybe Angus has more insight into this than I could provide, is like whenever we were like, as soon as we opened this up, we knew that we were gonna like a lot of the power was going to require us being able to integrate with third-party APIs, which brought a whole host of other challenges. Like, how do you actually let customers authenticate into those services? So we had to figure out like, how do we let customers use their API secrets to authenticate into that service? Then once we added that, it was like, okay, now how do we make sure that this is like secure and anonymized in a way that like, you know, that key would be stored safely and not compromised and stuff like that. So we had to solve that challenge. And then there were just like general challenges around like we had this like little editor where we were like, okay, here, just like dump some code in there. But then as soon like the immediate feedback that we got from folks, especially people who were like used to using, like who were developers in a couple of cases who were like using some sort of IDE, they were like, I can't write code in this like this small window. And they were like literally using something like Sublime or IntelliJ and like cutting and pasting code like directly into our app. So it was like a lot of like us trying to figure out like what is the right level of customization and while keeping things like flexible in ways that were like, I'd say that was some of the bigger challenges. Angus, I don't know if you had any more that you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I think that you touched a little bit on the security. I think that was a fun challenge of that there's just like pretty high potential risk with like storing API keys and running arbitrary code and calling out to third-party services and figuring out all the way that we could like sandbox and encrypt and like get everything locked down so that we felt solid doing it. Because if we didn't feel 100% solid, then it just wouldn't have happened. And then the performance aspect too of like, you know, now that we have actions that are, you know, kind of running up to 20 seconds, like not totally unbounded, but, you know, we don't know how long it's going to take. And just because it's not just doing one thing, it's really hard to kind of approximate what their performance is going to look like. And it just was actually like kind of challenging to be able to like deliver that to people in a reliable way so that like when you run one of your custom code actions, it finishes in you know, a reasonable amount of time and doesn't get, doesn't take forever for it to get scheduled and actually run. So yeah, a lot of fun challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine. Randy asked another question in the chat. We have a use case where it's challenging to take the company name and the associated company so that they can get associated with the account. Right now it's manual. Would there be a way to automate this?
I think the answer is yes here. I don't want to give I don't like giving unqualified yeses, but if I'm understanding it right, it sounds like you have a company name on the contacts and you'd like to create a association between the company and the contact. HubSpot has a search API that you can use. So if you just have a workflow that's set up to enroll whatever the company name is updated on the contact, you could use that search API to look up the company by company name. And then if you find the company, then you could use our associations API to create the association between the company that you found and the contact that was enrolled into the workflow. So that's actually a pretty that's a pretty good use case for programmable automation.
All right, cool. Guys, if you have any further questions for Angus and Jesse, please post them in the chat now because we're almost at time. And I think if we don't get any more questions within like this in a couple of seconds or minutes, I think we're going to give the rest of the time back to all of the lovely folks that are available in this call today. And yeah, just have them get on with their days. And I don't see any more chats coming in. So I think we'll stop there. Guys, Angus, Jesse, thanks so much for joining us in this this AMA here. I hope everyone here had a lovely time and enjoyed talking to you. If anyone is interested, next week we'll have a automation workshop with Kyle Jepson, the Academy professor, where he can talk you through any of the use cases you have with custom code and workflows in general. Go to the community to find that event. And if anything else, just let us know in the community if you have any feedback for this event. But again, thanks so much, guys, for joining us here. And thanks everyone for taking that out of your day. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much and bye.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone.